Alesha who? That's right, we can just throw our Alesha decks in the trash now, maybe not the whole deck, but at least the commander, because she's effectively just been power crept out with Terra. Terra's better in every way. Not only does she gain flying, so she can attack a lot easier, she also just has the ability to mill 2 cards at the beginning of our upkeep, so she fills our graveyard, and last but not least, we can reanimate 3 power instead of 2, and I'll say it, she's prettier than Alesha. Not trying to get personal here, maybe got personal with that last one, but I think it's true, and I think it's worth saying. So we're going to talk about some strategies today. This list was initially just, hey, here's 40 cards you could run that have 3 power that she could reanimate. You guys have Scryfall. Scryfall's good for that. I'm not going to be that here. We're going to talk about the strategy, we're going to talk about some really broken stuff we can cheat into play, and we're going to talk about throwing away your Alesha deck and running this instead. Right after you guys claim your free $15 by clicking that whatnot link in the description down below. You guys knew it was coming. Helps me out. You guys get free money. Really good there. Additionally, you can get 20% off all of your Tellurian Library proxies, and you could like this video if you're enjoying the content. Now, let's get into how we would build Terra. I think this is, I'm not going to, go out on a limb and say this. I think this is the way to build her. She's just a very good toolbox commander. You put some really good creatures in your graveyard that are really hard for your opponents to deal with, and then you just keep reanimating them again and again and again. There's also ways to get a double effect of her ability. If we include something like an Ashnod's Altar and then double strike, boom, we can go ahead, activate it. She does first strike damage, then we sack that creature, and then we bring it back again. So we're generating the mana off of the Ashnod's Altar, and then we're reanimating something like a Fleshbag Marauder, and we're causing our opponents to sacrifice their entire board. Throw in a Blood Artist effect and you could get up to 6 die triggers this way. So we can do some really busted things since it is on combat damage, not attack. I'm pretty excited to play this girl and honestly build her, so let's get right into it. I think the key to this deck is going to be double strike, extra combats, and generating 2 mana every time a creature dies. We can also lean into ETB effects because again, we want to be sacking and reanimating creatures basically constantly. I'm going to go over some cards that have some pretty broken ETBs for this commander, and I'm going to go over some cards that help us generate mana whenever these creatures die. The super obvious one I talked about in the intro is Ashnod's Altar, especially if we have double strike, because the first strike damage happens, we get the trigger, we reanimate something, we sacrifice it, then the other combat damage happens, and then we get to do that again. So we can even reanimate the same creature using this, which is very powerful, especially when we're talking about using Fleshbag Marauder effects. There's 4 of these now, sorry, and I think we want to play most of them in the deck. Not only are they a good tempo play, they get rid of a creature on all of our opponent's board, it's also a die trigger, which we care about, and additionally, these put themselves in the graveyard, so we'll instantly have something we can always reanimate with our commander. This deck could easily turn into how many times can we reanimate Plaguecrafter to cause our opponents to discard their entire hand because they don't even have a board state left. Back onto generating 2 mana, we can even use stuff like Pitiless Plunderer, Pawn of Ulamog, and Warren Soul Trader. Now, whenever a creature dies, as long as we have a sack outlet and Pawn of Ulamog and Pitiless Plunderer on the battlefield, boom, we get 2 mana there. Warren Soul Trader is the sack outlet, so just Warren Soul Trader with Pitiless Plunderer is actually insane and causes us to generate 2 mana whenever a creature dies, which again, I think that's where we want to be. We can also just flat up double up on all of the ETB triggers by using something like a Luminous Broodmoth or even a Preston the Vanisher. Since we're not casting these creatures, Preston is perfect here, and so is Luminous Broodmoth. It actually allows us to get more value off of our sack outlets as well. So these are also 2 perfect cards that I'm super excited to use. Kiki Jiki also fits super perfectly in this strategy. Watch out for Kiki Jiki, he does go infinite with a lot of extra combat things. Maybe you want that though. Now you can just go infinite combat steps by using something like Fear of Missing Out or Combat Celebrant. Pretty broken. Aurelia the War Leader is also a bomb in this deck. She's super expensive at 6 mana, but she has 3 power and boom, she grants us an additional combat step, which is exactly what we want. I'm also in love with Ghoulcaller Gisa here. I never want to cast her for 5 mana, but since we can cheat her into play for 2, I think it's perfect. And I know the majority of the deck is 3 to 2 power creatures, but even sacrificing a creature to get 2 more creatures that we can then sacrifice in an Aristocrats deck is 100% worth it. Grey Merchant of Asphodel, I don't have to tell you guys, this is broken. Everybody's won the game with this card in an Aristocrats deck, and this deck is going to be no different. He's going to be super powerful here. Delaney Wild Mage, as long as we're tying in extra combat steps, we may as well start creating token copies of other creatures we have. That way we can get even more ETB goodness. Deathbringer Thraktar is always a card I've wanted to put in a deck, but I can't justify it for 6 mana. But it's perfect here because it only has 3 power. Whenever another creature dies, you may put a 1/1 counter on Deathbringer Thraktar, and then we can remove a 1/1 counter from Deathbringer Thraktar, and then he deals 1 damage to any target creature or player. So it's basically a walking ballista that has 3 mana, but you get the counters whenever something dies. Let's say we cast a Plague Crafter. Boom, instantly we put 3 counters on this guy, and he's a 6/6. So he gets big very fast, and then again, we're sacrificing our own stuff, putting more counters on him. We're able to remove creature spells with him because we can remove counters from him and to ping them down. He can just flat kill a table. He's kind of like another Blood Artist effect. I'm just excited to try this guy out. He also is going to hit like a truck because he's going to be massive, and we're tying in extra combat steps. Now that the cope is out of the way, let's talk about some real cards like Bloodletter of Aclazotz. 4 CMC, has 2 power. Boom, we're cheating this guy into play and doubling the damage our opponents take on our turn. Notably, it's life loss as well, which is very important for those Blood Artist effects. I also like Fellbeast of Mordor here. Kind of a new card. Kind of like what it does. Whenever Fellbeast of Mordor enters the battlefield or attacks, target opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of 1/1 counters on it. It also has Devour, so you can instantly use it as a sack outlet and get a ton of damage out on our opponents. We can also use cards like Endrixar here. 5 CMC, but only 2 power. And then he says, whenever you cast a creature spell, create X 1/1 Black Thrall creature tokens, where X is the spell's mana value. You never get to 7, which is when you have to actually sacrifice Endrixar, because we're always going to be sacrificing these before we get to that point. Fury is going to be solid removal. We get Karmic Guide. It's 5 CMC but 2 power, so we're able to reanimate our things that have a little bit more than 3 power that we want on the battlefield. Meteor Golem removes something. Duplicant removes something. Blade Historian, also perfect here, has 2 power. We can cheat it in with our commander, and it allows all of our creatures to have double strike. I know I said to throw away your Alesha, but okay, let's bring her back. Let's throw her in the 99. There's still plenty of targets we can hit with her ability, and that way she doesn't feel like super left out. I know she's not as pretty as our Terra, but she can be in the 99. How about that? I'm also super excited just to cheat in some 4 CMC things and just cheat their mana cost by half, right? Like Disciple of Bolas is now only 2 mana, and that is massive because you'd easily spend 2 mana to sack a 2/2 to draw 2 cards and gain 2 life. Now that's the very, very low end here, but the very, very low end is very, very good, so I'm taking that. I also like Grim Hireling, not 4 mana anymore, only 2 mana. Canoptic Scarab Swarm, I think, is going to be one of the best cards in the deck. It's 2 CMC, it's got an ETB, so we can use it again and again and again. It hoses over graveyard strategies, so now we know we're the only ones going to be doing graveyard stuff. And then we get a 1/1 for each artifact and land card we exile this way. That's going to be insane, because now we're able to sack those to our Blood Artist effects to even get more value. I think we also play the Sad Robot here. Not only is he going to draw us a card, but additionally he's going to go ahead and ramp us whenever he enters the battlefield, and I think that's the way to go. I think you do want to make this like sort of ETB deck that gets a lot of value when creatures die, and then you've got your Blood Artist effects to round it all out. I think Helm of the Host could also be super funny here. Remember, our commander triggers at the start of combat, and we're including cards that give us additional combat steps. Helm of the Host also triggers at the start of combat, so now we get 2 Terras, 3 Terras, 4 Terras, and we're milling more and more and more cards, reanimating more and more and more creatures. I think it could just be very fun. It's always a card that could get very fun because we are playing Commander, but I think in this deck it's also going to have some other synergies along with things like Aurelia the War Leader that just goes infinite. Maybe something we look at. Also, Aurelia goes infinite with Sword of Hearth and Home. I don't know if you're interested in 2-card infinites, but I thought I'd throw them in here as a kind of, hey, here's some extra value. Anyway, I hope this helped you find a direction to take your Terra deck. With that being said, guys, let's shout out those patrons. Irrelevant, Chicken Salad, Creator, The Professional Heal, and Excessum. You guys are amazing. I hope this helped you guys in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you guys in the next one.